Okay, I'm going to bring the meeting of the Manchester Board of Selectmen to order tonight. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm Keith Ann. I'm assuming you're set. I don't know if he is, but anyway. So if anyone's recording the meeting, I'd like to know that. And other than that, Gail will be taking minutes. Please silence your phones if you can. And we have a pretty full agenda. We'll do the best that we can to move through it. If anybody has any comments on topics other than things on the agenda right now, happy to take any comments. Okay, great. All right, first item on the agenda is the review and the improvement of the town election warrant and poll workers. We have a document that we need to sign. Greg, do you want to just give us an overview?
So, election's coming up on May 21st. We need to have the warrant 35 days ahead of time. We hand it off to town clerk Christine Cynthia, who's here this evening. So we're timely. Today's the day to do that. So you have the elections for the various officers coming up on the 21st, and then the two ballot questions that are follow-up from town meeting. Town meeting approved two capital projects being paid for through a capital exclusion, and that also requires a ballot vote. So the warrant contains those election of officers and those two questions for the two capital projects.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second, thank you. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Okay. We just need to do a quick signature on these, and we'll keep going. Next topic, antique table, reconsideration of liquor license. Do you want to set us up for that, Greg, while we sign these?
So you heard this application a couple months ago, and there were some issues that the state had with the application, so the state sent it back to the applicant. They have corrected those deficiencies, and therefore it's back before you. Since you held a public hearing beforehand, you don't need to have a formal hearing, but it is back before you for your final approval on the corrected application.
Okay. Good. Anybody have any questions, or Eli, I know you have a couple.
I have one, and it's
Okay.
very odd, but I just wonder why on the application it states that it's 2 stories, but yet it also references that the basement has a kitchen. So shouldn't it be listed that it has 3 floors, 3 stories? I mean, just for clarification purposes.
Well, I turn to Sonia if you have an answer to that. But, yeah.
Oh, great. Do you want to come up, Matt, and just identify yourself and answer the question if you could, thanks. Either one works. Yep, thank you.
How you doing? I'm Matt Gateman, Antique Table. That was on the ABCC license?
This is the whole application, yes, for a new license, yeah.
I mean, I can ask my lawyer about that.
It's
He submitted it with the city.
right, and it was just within the application itself, which he or somebody filled out, and it doesn't concern us really, but it might be a point of clarification that you would like to have for your purposes.
Okay.
Okay.
But if I approve it, I just want to make sure that we approve it with that being noted.
So since we have you here, I have 2 questions that are not related, and your license is not contingent on them at all, but I'll ask them anyway. One is, but out of curiosity, do you know when you're planning on opening?
When we get the answer from the ABCC, I mean, we're pretty much ready to go. We're waiting for the health board as well. We just got an architect just drew us the plans, so we're submitting that to the health board this week. And then once we wait for them, we can put everything in the kitchen, and then we'd be ready.
So you do have a renovation phase to go
Yes.
before you'll be in. So it'll be a little while yet, but your ducks are almost in a row.
Yes.
And then another question we have from somebody is, are you doing any signage change on the front? Are you going to be have you already been in touch with the Historic District Commission?
Yes, we have been.
And have you had a
So we'd be
hearing in front of-
replacing the current sign, the same size, just as Antique Table instead of 7 Central.
You've already been approved by them?
Yes.
You looked like you
The-
weren't sure. Are you sure you have had a hearing with them?
I'm pretty sure I'll reach out to her in the morning, though.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. So I'll take a motion with the 2 questions here that we're suggesting that you check to make
Yep.
sure about the 3-story piece and also confirm the historical commission's approval of that.
Okay.
So I'll take a motion with those 2 pieces.
So move.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Public hearing for our, whoops, hopefully it won't roll off. Come on up. That's okay. She's going to grab it from you right now. I'll take a motion to open the public hearing for the conduit construction of Cobb and Masconomo by National Grid.
Second.
Okay?
Rita Mahaber Sheehy, representing National Grid, 44 River Street, Beverly, Mass. This is to provide service to that location.
Is that on? Okay. Usually it comes through, that's okay.
And also to set up for future improvement in that area.
Everybody reviewed the plans and the information? Any questions, comments? Timeframe?
As soon as we get this done and civil can be scheduled.
Okay. And returning, obviously, the street to better, if not the same or better condition and all the things that we usually ask for.
Correct.
Please detail.
Okay, if there are any other questions, public have any questions? Can you, Jim, can you identify yourself and take a mic, please?
Jim Brown, 11 Beach Street, Manchester, Mass. This is for burying underground lines for the anti-cable? Oh, for another, just a neighborhood or another? Oh, Masconomo, okay. Just curious, when a while back, I think it was Tom Keogh I was addressing this with, there were a number of double poles that was stuck around town. And when Tom told me, oh, the next time National Grid comes in and asks for something, we'll make sure that they take care of all those. Have those been cleaned up? I'm just asking. I don't know.
I don't know. Greg, do you know the answer to that?
I don't have the answer to that.
But we can check.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Just curious.
Are
Okay.
you referring to the double poles that Tom Kehoe mentioned quite some
when-
time ago?
Yes, well, like there was one on Pine Street that I was complaining about particularly because it blocked the view when you were pulling out of the driveway.
Recently or back when
No,
Tom
no,
Kehoe
geez,
first
6
raised
years
this?
ago, 6 years ago.
Okay, so I remember that, and I remember that Tom Keogh followed up on that at the time. And as far as I recall, those were all resolved.
They were all, okay.
But
yeah.
if you see something
I
still
think the
pending,
leverage
let
was
us know.
going to be when you guys were voting on something for approval for them, you're going to say, yes, but.
Have you been by those recently? I mean, have you gone by?
I've got so much on my plate right now. It's the last one.
Okay.
I was just wondering if you were asking if you happened to
I was living
notice.
at 119 High at the time, and my daughter just had a license, and it was a safety issue.
Mhm.
And I 3 years, I had to go back. Somebody ran into it, knocked it down, and she
Mm.
just knocked it another, sunk another hole, knocked the old one, so that we didn't have to water.
All right, well, you know what, if you
Yeah.
see it or if anyone reports that, we're happy to take it up, just report it back our way. Okay, thanks. Any other comments? Okay. All right, we'll take a motion. Do you want to say something? Okay.
Chuck Dam, DPW. Actually, similar to your point, Jim, there's 2 manhole structures on Masconomo that we get complaints about regularly that I actually mentioned to Sonia when this was coming on the agenda. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. When your civil team mobilizes to the site, they should address those structures. There's the collapsing grates on top of them that have a very bad bang every time traffic goes over. That's all.
You're speaking about the one that is at the beginning of, I think, Beach Street and
There's one at the intersection of Beach and Masco, and there's one further down towards Cobb.
okay.
All right, thanks. All right, with those comments said, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so, happy to have a motion to approve this with the proviso that we can take a look at those 2 manhole covers as well, and, any other, workaround that we need to look at to make sure everything goes back to good shape, so
Is the proviso look at them or address them?
address them, look and address. Yeah, so
Okay.
address. So why don't you make the motion then?
And return the street to.
And to return the street to as is or better than it was. So moved.
Okay. Did you get that? Gail? Who's second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good, that's great, thank you very much. All right, we're on to the complete streets layout piece. I want to say that walking in tonight before our meeting, we received a petition of 215 signatures, including, 5, 6, or 10 letters that were brought forward to the Board of Selectmen on this topic tonight. Being the fact that we got them 5 minutes before we walked in, we've scanned them a little bit in terms of looking at them, but I just want to acknowledge that we have them. We'll certainly put this into the mix in terms of our decision-making. I just want to be very, very clear where we are in the process. So,
Susan, I'm sorry.
yeah.
We were going to do the Sustainability Committee.
Oh, did I
committees
skip?
first.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to take a step back. Oh, okay. That's me. I go fast. I can't help it. I just move things along too
No,
quickly.
that's a good thing.
All right, well, okay, so,
Consent agenda?
okay, all right. Sorry, I checked off that and did it by mistake. All right, well, why don't we I'm going to hold on the complete streets. We'll come back to that in 2 seconds. Let's do our sustainability and get back. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, Dana, do you want to come up forward? Thank you. Come on up. Just grab a microphone. So thank you for volunteering and willing to step forward for the Sustainability Committee. Maybe just tell the board a little bit about yourself. We read sort of your piece, but if you can give a little bit of information about your background and your interests, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah, my name is Dana Menon. I live on Hickory Hill Road, and we moved here a few years ago, and I'm excited to hopefully have the opportunity to get involved now. I have a couple of little kids, so they've taken up a lot of my time so far. I have a background in landscape architecture and municipal planning, so I'm very familiar with kind of the way things work with boards and committees and getting things done on kind of the local level. And I've always had a strong interest in sustainability, and I think obviously it's been a critical issue for a long time, but I think that things have really started to pick up speed, especially in initiatives locally in this area that can really have an impact and be a good example for other municipalities and hopefully the state. And I think that there's been a lot of great work done here, and that there's a great possibility for other work to be done, partnering with some of the other boards in town, partnering with other municipalities in the area. And I think that, yeah, there's been a lot of momentum that's been built that could be really continued on. And yeah, it's been an interest that I've had for quite a while, but it's, for me, in terms of where I am in my life, it's a good opportunity for me to get involved.
Great, good, thank you. Any questions, comments?
Just the usual time commitment to the committee and being able to attend evening meetings and the occasional.
Yeah, it would not be a problem. When I was working as a planner, I had probably several night meetings a month, so this would actually be an easy schedule.
Any other questions, thoughts?
No questions, just thank you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, good. Thanks, you all set? Great, thank you. Okay, and we have Carly, when she comes, we'll talk with her, and then we'll take our vote tonight, right, on the appointing the 4? Okay.
We also have
The student, right, which I think I agree with doing that. So we'll hold, we're running a little bit ahead, so let's do this. I think that, So we're due at 7. Okay, we'll go be fast. You want to run through the consent agenda real quick? Everybody? Okay. So we have our Board of Selectmen minutes for March 4th, the 21st, and April 1st. A letter from Dave Germain regarding fish trap authorization permit renewal, the actual renewal. Manchester Essex Little League request to place sponsor banners, and Arbor Day proclamation. Is there anything in here that we need to take out? And Eli, your comments on the minutes have been done, right? Gail, you did his update, okay. So I will take a motion to
I
approve.
had a couple of those as well, and I didn't see yours, so I apologize.
Oh, which, for the minutes? Okay.
Yeah. One was just the page 7 of the minutes, which is on page 39 of our agenda. And it was just Mr. Rossi, 9 Bridget Street. Yeah, Bridget. And then that was it on this. Other than I think the ones that you, so.
Was that it? Okay, thanks. Okay. Well, with that duly noted, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Correspondence, we'll just take a look at that. We have a letter from John Round regarding the Central Street Bridge Replacement Project. Letter from Michael Sacco regarding the Essex Regional Retirement Board. Letter from Douglas Hotchkiss regarding the Adele Irvin Longevity Bench. And the letter from Ryan Sweezy regarding Louis Agazi. Do you know
Who was that?
everybody?
Who wrote that letter? I couldn't tell.
Ryan Swansea.
Swansea, okay, thank you.
Just acknowledging that we've received those in our packet, and if there's any follow-up needed, we'll certainly do that through the board and the town administrator.
Could I ask if on Christine's letter regarding the flashing lights, did she ever get the answer? She was supposed to get an answer from you regarding the transport. She had said flashing lights were not supposed to be used in town, and you had said there was an exemption for transportation, but you were gonna verify and get back to her.
Right, so that is an exemption.
I'm just curious, with that exemption, what would flashing lights be for if not traffic, transportation?
Flashing lights for, for businesses trying to attract.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. So, oh, Carly's here? Oh, great, come on up. Good, come on. Just come sit, perfect timing. If you can just grab that, and thank you. So, thank you for stepping up and being willing to be on the Sustainability Committee. If you want to just give the board a quick background and why you're interested, we'd love to hear that.
Sure. I've been living in Manchester since my oldest was a year and a half. I have 3 children now, live in the community, and I'm interested in the Sustainability Committee just because I'm concerned about the environment and the rapid depletion of our resources. I just recently completed my sustainability certificate from the Boston Architectural College, and I would like to pursue my master's, actually. So I just need to get my stuff together and apply. But I have half the classes done, so hopefully that'll be a good thing.
Very good.
Your good time frames for meetings at night and
Yes.
occasionally during the day. Thanks.
Yep, I'm free whenever.
Okay.
What's, so you're familiar with the Sustainability Committee charge, and what do you see as issues that you would be liking to address?
I know that they work a lot with recycling. I think that it could be expanded to also address, rather than just recycling, the using less, trying to eliminate plastics. They're unhealthy and they don't ever biodegrade. I'm pretty passionate about composting, which I know we have a compost facility here. I think we could reduce a lot of our waste and be able to turn it into other things. recycling isn't really recycling. It's not always turned into other products. It's, unfortunately, I'm sure you've heard the stories that it's now sold to other places and is burned, and it's, so I think using less is important. Focusing on what we do use and using it over and over again when possible.
Comments, questions? Okay, great, thank you. So, yeah, we're good, thanks. So Greg, can we just have the final slate, or can you give us the final people that we need to approve? The names, we'll go ahead and forward that.
So you have the two ladies this evening, and then Melissa Flynn and Allison St. Marie.
Okay.
And then if you want to go forward with the student rep as
Yeah,
well.
is there, I think that's,
It's a
did you read
wonderful
that?
idea.
What year is he?
He's a junior.
He's a junior.
And is the proposal that he be made a straight-up member of the committee, or, because that will technically bring us to an even number, which we
Right.
don't do on committees.
Right. So it could be a non-voting member.
Right, just
Yeah.
a student representative, non-voting.
Okay. So I'll take a motion for the 4 folks and student representative, non-voting member for the Sustainability Committee.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Thanks. Any other things, questions? Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Great. Thank you very much. You guys are on. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah?
It's quick, right?
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So, we are supposed to start the complete streets at 7. So we should wait for that just to make sure, because people will get here for that. We can talk about the Citizenship Award at this point, if you want to skip to that. Did everybody get the copy of what I sent about the language on that? Did we, I didn't notice in the packet. Okay. I'm just going to read it so we can do this. Okay. Okay. So the Adele Irvin Citizenship Award, we announced at town meeting that we were changing our basic Board of Selectmen Citizenship Award to the Adele Irvin Citizenship Award. And this is given annually by the Board of Selectmen to a graduating senior from Manchester Essex High School and a Manchester resident. Excuse me, can we? Thank you. As citizens, we're vested with rights, privileges, and duties in being part of our community. With the right to express ourselves, we have the responsibility to keep informed and participate. With the right to vote, we have the responsibility to respect the democratic process as well as others' rights, beliefs, and opinions. And finally, with the right to disagree, we have the responsibility to do respectfully. Adele Irvin, a longtime resident of Manchester by the Sea, was a passionate volunteer on numerous boards and committees for over 50 years. In her later years, she was a continuous participant in the Board of Selectmen's biweekly meetings and often provided her thoughts and concerns on issues. Adele was a true believer in democracy and could be found the first Monday of every April sitting at the annual town meeting waiting her turn to speak on an issue or move a question to a vote. If anyone ever exemplified the spirit, grace, and contribution of true citizenship, it was Adele. Her dedication and perseverance to be informed, ask the hard questions, and hold us all accountable for a better Manchester will not be forgotten. Adele is a perfect model of good citizenship, and her passing at the age of 94 in June 2018 has left a legacy of goodwill and kindness. This award will serve as a reminder of Adele, but also look forward to young people who exemplify their dedication to the community and good citizenship. So if everybody approves that, that's the language we'll put forward back to the school, and we will have that going forward being very
That's good. Wonderful.
good. Okay. So I'll take a motion to approve the language for the Adele Irvin Citizenship Award.
Second.
Any questions? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, we're excited about this. It's a good thing. Okay. Being we're so close, I think we can just go. Okay. So I'm going to rewind of what I started with here earlier. Sorry for the jump in. We received prior to this meeting tonight a petition from 215 people in town requesting that we take a look and seriously reconsider looking at the work that we're proposing in downtown area. We also have 5 or 6 letters of such. And seeing that we got those earlier, right as we walked into the meeting, we'll certainly review that as part of our packet. Tonight's purpose of this meeting was just an update in terms of where we are relative to this. There's been some work with the DPW, our consultant, as well as we had a meeting with the Impact Committee, people and the citizens that were impacted by this, and had a couple of public meetings around it. So what we're doing right now is getting all this information put forward. We're still waiting on our bids, which hopefully will be in the first week in May, we're thinking. So until we actually have our bids and we know the costs and the real detail and data on this, we're not making any decisions relative to this project. So I just want to be very clear. The purpose of what we've been trying to do is get people engaged, and I'm very happy to see people here. I'm very happy to have had comments come forward and working with our teams, including bike and pedestrian, including downtown improvement, our planners. All those folks are together. We're trying to weigh in on getting as much information as we can, but the cornerstone of this decision obviously will be around the financial part of it. So we will take all of this information to heart. It will come back in a package. We're hoping to get this on our May 20th agenda, unless something comes in earlier, which I'm not sure if it will, and plus with everything coming through. So I would say if you have any additional comments or questions that you'd like to share with the board, please bring them through to the town administrator's office. We can certainly take some tonight if we have people that would like to speak briefly about it. But again, we're not making any decisions on anything until we actually get the full package and have the cost and understanding of what the impact will be. Okay, so does anybody from the board have any questions or whatever? All right, Greg, do you want to just take us through what the changes were?
So I can fairly briefly walk through changes. So after the meeting that was had with the various stakeholders, sort of a lot of good input, both from folks who want to see improvement to the pedestrian crossings in particular, and folks who wanted to make sure we were not eliminating, having a net loss of on-street parking. So the designers took those sort of 2 tasks in hand and developed additional plans for the 2 primary intersections, which have created the most discussion, that being the one here at Central and School, and the other one at Beach and Union. So this plan on the board right now, not terribly easy to see, but basically what it does is simplifies it by having just the 2 crosswalks, the main crosswalk at School Street, moving that forward, and then the crosswalk across Central at the intersection as well, rather than further back. And so what this does then is create some additional sidewalk space on the north side, in front of, basically in front of 7 Central, in front of the insurance company building there. And then it comes across Central Street, and at that point, there is an extension of the sidewalk into the parking lane, if you will, in order for that people can see traffic coming in either direction. So get them out from behind the parked cars, which is one of the objectives, trying to make it safer for pedestrians. So this version, as I say, is simpler than what was presented earlier. It doesn't have another crosswalk coming across Central or Union in this case. It also proposes making the opposite direction, the one-way direction on Church Street, picking up an additional parking space by moving a fire hydrant that's there where that green square is, next to the library. I should note that also as part of the Town Common project, just off of this diagram, there are 2 additional handicap parking spaces, new ones proposed behind the church on town property. And an improved handicap ramp into Town Hall and to the police station. That's somewhat parenthetical to this project. And then there are the possibility then of adding 2 more parking spaces in front of the library. So doing all of that, this actually has a net gain of a parking space. You lose some parking. You lose the two on that north corner of School and Central, and you lose the two where the new crossing comes. You gain two back where the existing crosswalk is, and you keep a handicap parking space on the street right before the Church Street entrance. You lose one on the opposite side, and the purpose there is to force vehicles to swing wider as they prepare to turn onto School. So right now, traffic cuts that corner, goes over the sidewalk, causing damage to the catch basin and to the building, et cetera. So by widening the sidewalk there, it forces people to make more of a 90-degree turn, so more than 90-degree, rather than cutting across, which is what they're currently doing.
Craig, when you say one-way, currently church is one-way going out, are you saying change the one-way direction to
Correct.
coming in?
Right.
And so the spaces will stay on the
Stay on the
library
side that they're on.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank
But it just eliminates conflict, as people currently, as you come out of that, if you want to turn left, you're just entering the intersection immediately, and it just adds to the confusion and complications of that intersection.
Absolutely.
So many people have suggested, let's make it one way the other way.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that's the current design as laid out, trying to, again, accommodate the various desires for making it easier to cross, making no-let loss in on-street parking, and enabling the turning movements to happen in a more defined pattern without people sort of cheating and cutting across sidewalks or what have you.
I will, I just want to go through the data first, then absolutely I will.
So let me get So then here we are at Union and Beach. So here the changes, so we've eliminated the crosswalk on the western edge. And instead of the crosswalk across Beach going diagonally uphill, one of the recommendations from members of the public was, well, could we cut that more straight across, making it not an uphill climb on the crosswalk. And so it comes across now right towards the fire hydrant that is there on Beach Street. And then, so that becomes the main crosswalk, and then the other crosswalk is then across the end of Union, where it's a one-way road. And there is a extension of the sidewalk there, again, to try to get people out from behind the parked cars, assuming you put all the parked cars on the other side of Union. By putting all the cars on the other side of Union on that one-way section, you only have one curb cut instead of three. So you gain 2 parking spaces on Union, and you eliminate 1 parking space in front of the businesses in the intersection, but you pick it up just a little further down where the current crosswalk is. So again, no net change in on-street parking right there, and you're picking up a couple more on Union. So again, this was an attempt to accommodate the various desires that people had, and that's where we are with these 2 intersections.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions from the board before I open up? Okay.
I already jumped in.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, so I'll open for public comment. Please take a mic and identify yourselves. Happy to answer questions. If we don't have the answers, we'll certainly get back to you. Thank you.
Well, I'll add one more comment.
Oh, sorry.
One of the other recommendations that came out of the public discussions was adding some additional streetscape, if you will, plantings, benches, et cetera. So we don't show those in these designs yet. That is something, though, that they're working on and would be part of a final plan.
Hi, my name is Elaine Champagne. I live at 5 Jeffrey Court. I just got aware of what has been happening, so I may not have all the data. But one of the things I'm very concerned about is, well, all of this actually, and I'm looking at it from a business perspective and also a client that frequents the downtown retail shops and restaurants. My concern is that right now it's very difficult to park. I'm concerned about, it's very difficult to see this, especially at that size. It would be great if we could get a big poster so all of us could get a better sense of what this really looks like.
Yeah, you can also see them online.
Yeah, I looked at them online, but it's still, it's really difficult to tell. I agree. One of my biggest concerns is not only Central and Union and Central, but School Street in Central. Now, I've lived here since 1978, and every time taking a right onto School Street from Central Street is very difficult, particularly after the lines on the street were moved. People were forced to go out into Central Street in order to take a right, not to hit the sidewalk, putting themselves and the other person at risk to take that turn. Plus, where the Pilates businesses on the left-hand side there, cars are parking on that street, which makes it difficult to make that corner. So you've got the sidewalk, you've got cars parking there. It's a very congested area, and I don't see how this is going to open up that space. If we're trying to open up space and give people the opportunity to move freely and not on curbs, I'm not convinced that what I'm seeing now is going to make that any easier.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? Question, comment? You just grab.
My name's Remco Brucker. I've lived in town for 19 years. I work in town. I've got 3 kids in school. I travel by both intersections probably 6 times a day, maybe 8. And I have grave concern that the narrowing of the street is going to be a major congestion area, and it's going to cause big congestion, in particular in the summer. I'm concerned that perhaps civil engineers haven't been here in the summer when there's much more traffic. You have landscape trucks going through here. You've got sometimes really heavy equipment going through there that are, 10, 12 feet wide. To have both of those going through, that's a big concern. If you look at that plan there, the overall narrowing of that intersection is about 12 feet. So that's taking 12 feet out of that intersection. And I'm very concerned about that. And there's really no way around. You'd have to go, obviously, up to Pleasant and around. The area at Union Street as well, I think that turn is a difficult turn as it is. And so the crosswalk over at Union Street, that's such a narrow street as is, why make that more narrow? That's my major concern.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Right back for Linda first, and then you. She threw her hand up first.
Hi, I'm Linda Crosby, and I own the building at the corner of 1 School Street and Union. I've owned it for 35 years, and I've been a resident just down the block for 50 now. I can't believe it. But anyway, one thing I really am concerned about is the historic nature of the town, and it seems to me at other meetings I've been, people are just not happy with the bump out look, number one. And I totally agree with Remco about the narrowing. I guess I thought at the last meeting, we had pretty much discussed the fact that, yes, the corner out in front of my house needs to be rounded out a little bit because people are going over it all the time One hit my building last summer. My manager, who couldn't be here today but lives on the second floor right over that corner, he said these huge trucks are constantly going over that corner, and the building is vibrating. I mean, this is a real safety concern for me and also for pedestrians who might not be visible when these trucks are coming. So we've talked about the trucks. I don't know whether you divert them to Pine Street if you're considering doing this. But the other thought that I had was that we had discussed maybe rounding out in front of my building or maybe a little bit in front of 7 Central, but eliminating the third bump out in front of the church. Because together that's going to make the whole intersection narrow. And I've talked to a number of people who are very concerned about bikers and that it isn't necessarily a safety issue for bikers. I don't know about for pedestrians. I am a little concerned, too, about whether people will abide by the fact that they don't have that other crosswalk, not in front of my building so much as the one at the other corner. So I just think this still needs more input. I don't feel that the impact meetings or the petitions, the letters that have been written, maybe have completely been taken into consideration. So thank you.
To clarify, you're talking about this design right here?
There's still bump outs. Yeah, is that what you're talking about?
This is the latest one that was sent out.
Right, so there's the one right in front of the church. So you see where the 2 red parking spaces.
Oh, yeah, all right, yep.
So there'd be that one to get people out at the same level as the parked cars. I guess it would be helpful to understand, it'd be helpful to understand the question of narrowing. So the travel ways are not being narrowed. Where things are being narrowed is where parking currently takes place. So I'm a little confused about the comment that it's narrower. If we could just, it would be helpful to have some clarification on that, I think.
Go ahead.
Well,
Can you grab a mic, please?
The intersection is being narrowed in all 3 areas. You have the turn coming from Union Street onto School, and you've got that corner that the lady was referencing. That's being pushed out, so the traffic has to turn around a more difficult corner.
Right, so that's, if I can just interrupt, so the reason for that is to force vehicles to swing wider.
Yeah, but then at the same time, you're narrowing on the other side so that any traffic on that side can't really move.
Well,
So
but you're not narrowing it on the other side because right now there's cars parked there.
Not often. I mean, I shouldn't say not all the time. There's also a lot more you can see between the cars. This way, you're forcing everybody within that area. And likewise, on the lower side, as you're coming up Central and you're going towards Union there, you end up a lot of traffic. That's the only spot where there's a little bit of relief. And if you have larger cars, larger trucks, you can actually make that turn fairly easily and not cramp the traffic on the north side there. So if you do it in all 3 areas, there's absolutely no relief for any traffic. I could see perhaps one of those corners, but the other concern I have is that one crosswalk that goes north-south, I'm concerned that looks more, in plan it looks like it's north-south, but it's going to feel like you're walking for pedestrians right through the center of that intersection. And I think it wouldn't give me a good feeling walking right through the middle there. I would prefer to be more towards where the crosswalk was before.
You could angle it.
Which is narrow as well. I mean, part of this was shortening the amount of time on the street.
Okay, we had a gentleman up here, and then we'll go to the back.
Here we go. Here's a,
Oh, wait a second. One
Doris
second.
Brown, 7 Woodcrest Road, Manchester, Mass. I had the mic before anybody here.
You're good. You got it. You're on.
85 years old, born and raised in Manchester. A lover of Singing Beach. Very quickly, I think the pump outs, instead of being an asset or a liability, I think it's going to hinder the proper flow of traffic. Just my opinion. I was born and raised in Beach Street. I worked all my life on Beach Street. And I've seen the 18-wheelers coming on the top of Beach, coming down Central Union, and now he's got to hook a right onto Beach. He's on the top of the hill and he's hooking a right. The truck drivers are good, but it takes a lot of skill to do that. It's not a walk in the park. The visual, I watched this now all my life. The cars at the bottom of the hill, starting up the hill, sometimes you're in a car, you're halfway up the hill, and here comes an 18-wheeler around the corner. He's coming down, and you're going up. A little tricky. So now he made some changes tonight on these bump outs. I'm looking at the original plan, so I'm a little bit lost. So I think at least your plan, I think it was a detriment to traffic, that I think it's going to make it, let's say, risky more after have an accident with a car. I don't think it's going to help a pedestrian trying to cross the street. And I don't think it's going to help a guy on a bicycle. I don't think so. And I'm just thinking of something. Recently, they were planning to make a rotary at the end of Pine Street. I take Pine Street all the time. I almost got hit there, going around that rotary. I was almost around it, and somebody coming from Beverly Farms almost hit the back of my car. I'm just wondering about something. In their wisdom, they decided instead of making a permanent rotary, they said before you go putting a permanent one in, let's put a temporary one in. And we will watch and see what the traffic does. Cars coming down from Bennett Street, cars coming down from Pine Street, cars coming in from Beverly Farms. Let's see what happens. Well, I almost got hit there. I didn't say anything to anybody because I thought it was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. 2 weeks later, when reading the Cricket, I hear there's a whole bunch of complaints of other people almost having fender benders. So you might, if, I'm saying if, that's a big word, if the board decides they're determined to put these bump outs in, then and it's going to be a while before you get this grant, I consider putting maybe an obstacle where these bump outs are going to be, try to set up how it's going to be temporary to see just how the flow of traffic's going to go. Because they found after they tried to put this rotary in, and I almost got hit there, it was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't care if the state of Massachusetts says to the town, you're not going to pay a penny. We are going to pay every cent to put those bump outs in. If it's detrimental to the town, I don't think it should be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Parker Harrison. I live on School Street, right around the corner here. I'm also on the Bike Ped Committee. And the purpose of this Complete Streets program is clearly to make it safer for pedestrians and cyclists in town, okay? It's not at all to the advantage of drivers, okay? The idea is that downtown, you want to slow down the traffic, make it not only safer, but more comfortable for people to ride their bikes and walk down the streets and across the streets in the downtown area. To do that, the first thing you want to do is slow down the traffic. Everybody agrees with that, right? One of the clear ways to slow down the traffic is to make the street narrower. I think if you watch your own driving, when you're driving around town, you'll see that where the roads are narrower, either because the roads themselves are narrower or because there are parked cars on the side that make the actual driving lanes narrower, you drive slower. It's just a fact, okay? So, as somebody pointed out here, the bump outs are actually not bumping out into an area that wasn't already occupied by cars parking on the side of the road. It's just that what this does is it gives the pedestrians much better lines of sight to see if it's safe for them to cross the road. That's the first item. The second is that the cars have a better line of sight to see the pedestrians trying to cross the road. But as a pedestrian, you're always trying to be, defensive. And you want to see the car before it sees you. So you know whether you can do it or not. So, I mean, these actually have been toned down from the original sort of more aggressive approaches to slowing down the traffic, increasing the lines of sight for drivers and pedestrians. And I think that when everybody gets used to this, and this is actually done, and people are walking around town, you'll find it much more comfortable, you'll feel safer, you'll actually just feel better. The cars will drive slower. Not a lot, it'll be, a couple miles an hour. But it'll actually make a difference to everybody in the town. Thank you.
You can just hand his.
Hi, Lauren Bunker. I live on Pine Street, and I'm a shop owner downtown. I agree with slowing down the cars, but I don't think that this will slow down the cars. It won't slow down the trucks. I'm on Pine Street, and everybody's down to 20 miles an hour except for the trucks. I think the police need to be out there slowing people down. I think if you want to have safe pedestrians, you want to have safe bikers, but downtown's for shopping. It's, go to the beach and walk. I mean, I work downtown every single day, and the amount of people walking by, they're on the sidewalks. I for the life of me, don't understand how changing the entire structure of the downtown area is going to help bikers by slowing the traffic down. I think it's dangerous. Coming around that corner, cars whip around that corner. We're constantly crossing the street. Slow them down. Put a cop there. Put those little things in the middle of the sidewalk telling cars to slow down. I slow down since those have been in there. I drive down. I have a dog. I walk my dog. I'm always walking. I live on Pine Street. I work on Beach Street. So I take my time. I cross the street. I know it's driving. The streets are for cars. They're for driving. I don't see how this is going to help. I just don't. It's not going to help my business at all, that's for sure. People can't park, or if they have trouble driving downtown, they are not coming. They will not come to Manchester. They say it all the time. They say the only reason they came in is because they got a spot out front. They drive by if there's no spots out front. And if it's congested and it makes it worse for the driver, they'll just avoid Manchester.
Jim Brown, 11 Beach Street. I agree again with slowing down the traffic, for sure. I sit there. I also sit in the center of town daily, 7 days a week. However, this is narrowing the intersection, and you have to keep in mind that these two intersections that we're talking about right now are the primary paths between West and East Manchester. I mean, this is where the traffic goes, the emergency vehicles, large trucks, or whatever. Putting impediments, permanent structures in front of cars is not the answer. It's going to make the roads less safe. I think we need to be looking at less aggressive ways of doing this. Maybe speed bumps, brighter colors on the crosswalks, and enforcement of the current laws. People fly down that center of Beach Street 30 miles an hour still, and they fly through the stop sign in front of Crosby's Market. It's just unbelievable. I pull in and make my phone calls in the morning. I snicker watching people just complete disregard for the speed limits and the signs. It's ridiculous. You need to address that stuff first before you do anything this aggressive and this permanent in the center of town. The ones in front of the post office are just horrific. They look terrible. The leading edge and all those curb stones are chipped from people's cars hitting them. Just a terrible thing. So I strongly oppose this, regardless of the parking situation. Whether you gain or lose parking, this is just a terrible, terrible idea. Poor common sense.
Gar?
I'm Gar Morse, and I own the building at the corner of Union Street and Beach Street. And that's where I work. And there I have just two things that I have to say. One is, if you read highway design safety articles, and I've read quite a few, the most important contributing factor to highway safety is the speed of the cars. I know that is not a news flash for anybody, but there is a multiple of safety that goes when you lower the speed limit by 5 miles an hour. We have technically a 20 mile an hour. The downtown improvement recommended, when was it, Chris? A year ago? Yeah. A year ago that we lower the speed to 15. I don't know if you and I agreed with that, but we did. And the selectmen chose not to do that. That's okay. Your selectmen should do what they believe is right. I believe if we lowered the speed limit to 15 miles an hour and enforced it, I actually drive 15 through the middle of town. It isn't that torturous to do. You won't die if you do that. I mean, and that's figuratively and literally. The second thing is a very minor point, and that is on the intersection that I have to look at every day, which is where Union Street comes down. That's a very narrow street anyway. I question whether we need to build a bump out on Union Street to make Union Street even more narrower than it is. More narrow, not more narrower, just more narrow. That's adequate.
More narrower.
And the crosswalk, which I think the replacement of the stop sign is a great idea. But the crosswalk is really quite a short crosswalk, and I cross across there a lot. So I think that we really don't need a bump out. Overall, I am not in favor of these changes. I think they are, what I have said before, a one-size-fits-all civil engineering solution that can be applied to towns from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And we're not those towns. We are a special town. So I think we need to take a little more time and look at this carefully. That's it.
Thank you, Gar. Anyone else have any comments?
Dave Crean, 16 Crooked Lane. Part that bugs me the most about this, we haven't had any public safety official weigh in on this. I know we have an interim police chief. I don't have any letters from him. Do any of the selectmen have anything from him weighing in on this and their opinion?
On the police side of it?
As far as enforcement, safety, line of sight. I mean, in my opinion, the chief of police has, the highest authority, probably over you guys, even over the fire chief. He has arresting powers. He can, enforce what he wants to or not. I don't think he's tapped in or weighed in on anything. I think you might want to get his piece on that. We had the VHB person here, giving her a spiel about templates and everything. I agree with these guys as far as, the turning radius and all that. You don't know until you try it with the tape. And I talked about that too much last time we were here, one of the development meetings before. My feeling too is the other bump out where in front of Central Street, I don't feel like you have the line of sight. Something Mr. Fetterspiel just brought up, he used the word forced. You don't force cars into a certain area, you let it flow into a certain area. That's like one piece that I know Public Works and everybody else knows that. You have to show the traffic where to go. You can't just have it forced in one time. I'm more worried, and I brought this up last time, snow plow drivers with these bump outs coming in. The worst one is in front of Callis. So you come around Callis, great. All of a sudden, there's a driveway you can't adjust, and then you have that quick bump out. You go into contracted services versus the town guys who know it's there. I mean, that's just one more problem. And I just see more issues with the Central Street one with the gate valves and all that, with that being moved and not being able to find those in the middle of a snowstorm. But everyone's going to say, well, what do you need to find gate valves in the middle of a snowstorm? Well, if you have a water break, and that does happen. You guys are great with moving snow, but then if you don't move in time, you have more problems. You guys talked about planters and other type of landscaping. I mean, that ends up being, if it's a permanent type of thing, that's even more of a problem. And if it's a seasonal thing, that's a tremendous labor intensive type of contribution. Signage, I agree with that. Some of these other solutions that were proposed, maybe having the small, the bumps, the speed bumps might be, even temporarily and try these, but to go, full-blown this because we have the grant money, I don't agree with it. The parking spaces too, everyone's like, oh, this is for walking and slowing down. I'm all for that. But then I'm thinking about the mother of two. She has to get the antibiotic down at Allen's. Is she going to walk down the carriage when it's drizzling out, the end of March? No. She's getting her in a car. She's going down there. Or let's say it's not Allen's. Let's say she has to go into Crosby's and that's full and she can't find a spot. I'm worried about the people who aren't close to town, further out in the spots, the Pleasant Streets, the Hickory Hills. I don't see them walking, but maybe I'm under a rock and you guys can enlighten me, but I don't see that happening. I see for the immediate downtown area that may be an attribute, and definitely for the people moving in for the bump out at the 7 Central location. But I do not see this as a good piece, and I definitely think you should have the police chief weighing in on this. Thank you.
Thanks. Does anyone else have any other comments that haven't been stated so far? Because happy to weigh in on that. I think we've gotten pretty much the theme of what we've heard, but if there's something additional, anyone else? Jim, we're going to let Chris and then jump to you. Okay, Chris?
Yes, Chris Shea, 50 Bridge Street. I spent 12 years, I owned the property at 7 Central for a dozen years or so, and spent all that time every day at that intersection, and believe me when I tell you, it's crazy around there. And one of the crazy things that was not mentioned was that the stop sign on School Street, coming into the intersection, is about 10 feet behind the end of the building. You can't see either direction if you stop at the stop sign. And on the crosswalk, the people on Central Street and Union Street can't see you either. So one good thing about the plan is the stop sign is moved 25 feet forward into the intersection in front of the crosswalk. You can then stop, look left, look right. The stop sign isn't 50 feet ahead of you under a pine tree. It's actually right there on the sidewalk. So that wasn't mentioned before. I think that and the idea of moving the direction of Church Street is a very positive thing. That added another element to that intersection, which made it crazy out there. I can't tell you how many times people were hit by cars in that intersection, and the fire department has backed us up. They had to take people. That was when the crosswalk was in the middle of the block. Moving the crosswalk to the intersection is an important thing. So those are the only comments that I have. I think the idea of bump outs is something that really I don't think they're necessary either. But I think that the upper portion of this, the crosswalk across School Street and moving the one on Central are very important components, whether we do it permanently or just in paint. We could do this whole thing in paint and try it out, as some people have said today, and see how it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. One more comment back here, and then we'll jump up.
I'm going to enter the fray and get myself kicked off the Sustainability Committee before I even start. I think there's been a lot of great comments, both pro and con here. I just have two small things. I think that the alignment of the crosswalk across Central Street seems like it's encouraging people to jaywalk if you're coming from down Central Street and want to get into town, because it's tipped from School Street. If it were tipped a little bit more towards the library, people would be, kind of more almost directly, squarely across the road. That might be complicated right there, but I think that a lot of people are going to cut that corner. They're not going to walk all the way down to that corner to cross the street. The other thing is this is a little bit of a repetition, but I strongly agree with the fact that just lowering the speed limit and occasionally having police presence isn't going to slow people down. You really have to narrow people's perception of how wide the road is, whether that's physically narrowing it or visually narrowing it. That's the only thing that's going to consistently get people to slow down. As somebody who regularly drives down, we all do, from 128 down School Street, where it drops to 20 miles per hour, everybody's slamming on the brakes because they see that, and then people speed up again because it's a really wide street. And the same thing on Pine Street. It's just a really wide field, and so you feel really comfortable because you can see really far across the street. And if you can visually or literally make the street narrower, that would make a huge impact, much stronger, and you wouldn't need to rely on the occasional police presence being out there. So I think whatever we can do to do that, and it doesn't have to be a bump out, it can be a visual or making it seem busier or more complicated. It gets people to slow down and actually look at what's happening. I also think that speed bumps and crosswalks do not mix because people are watching the speed bump and not the crosswalk. So that can lead to some really close calls. Those are my comments. Hopefully I didn't irritate anybody too much.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. Dean Brown. I live on Washington Street these days. I walk all these intersections, these crosswalks, and you can tell I'm not a tall person. I have no problem being seen by anybody. I've been walking these walks for 40 years, and I don't think we need to change them. Certainly in a rush to change them, and not good to lose any of our parking. That's all I feel about that one.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments?
Just real quick, I really would appreciate some attention being paid to the idea of diverting the trucks down Pine Street, not having 18-wheelers coming down School Street. Linda mentioned that, and I think it's detrimental to the historical area. It's really inappropriate in a beautiful town like Manchester to have those trucks barreling through the most sensitive part of our town. So I hope that's not going to get lost in the shuffle. Thank you.
Yeah, George Parkhurst. I live on the furthermost point of School Street up towards the highway. And just to reiterate what you're saying about those large trucks going down School Street, if you've ever been in a house and listened to the sound of what those trucks do to your home, all of the windows vibrate. The whole house shakes and makes noises like you've never seen, and if you lived in those houses day after day, I think it's damaging to the structure for one, and I think that many of those homes on School Street are right on the street. There's just no room. A simple solution or a compromise would just to be like a lot of other towns do. You have the trucks go one way up Pine Street, and if they need to get to some place like the pit, they can access it from the highway, just going around. It's an easy solution. With regard to signs, my wife and I were coming off the highway the other night, and as we were approaching our home, which is right off the exit, we looked down School Street at night, and we were amazed. And it's something that we never noticed, how many signs that you see as you look down School Street. And these days, they all illuminate because of the way that they're printed with this reflective ink. And it's just amazing what this street has become. But I consider myself a little bit of an expert because every day I walk my dog on that street and I watch the same people coming down that road daily. Nobody pays attention to the passive signs, ever, or rarely. All of those well-lit, they're just there. People go by them. Every day I see the traffic, as soon as they see that active sign, which flashes your speed limit, almost all of them slow down. So imagine having to look at those signs, and I don't know why we keep putting more and more of those signs up. At the Ledgewood Road crosswalk there, occasionally if I'm tired or I'm not paying attention, my dog does something to distract me and I begin to walk out on School Street and I don't gauge the traffic properly. I mean, I'm not the tallest person either, but that large crossing sign in the middle, people don't see me there. And I've almost been hit because of that. So here you've got these things in the middle of the road, you've got a million signs that people don't pay attention to, and now the road is completely confusing. We haven't addressed or fixed the problem of the paint on the road, which we've all talked about 100 times, and we're adding a new solution to the town. I just don't think it works. I think with regard to what Spiro said and Dean and other people, I've been walking on my own since I was 6 years old in this town. My mother would send me to Hooper's to buy hamburger and cigarettes. when I was 6, and I never had a problem. And I raced up and down this town on bikes with packs of kids, and I have an 800-pound motorcycle that I navigate through these streets at the slowest speeds, and I never have a problem. And I just ask myself, who are these people that can't navigate through the town? It blows my mind. It's just a waste of everybody's time. It's a waste of money, and there just seems to be a much more simple solutions. If you can't get through the town, it's time to get a lark. Really. I mean, that's all I can say.
All right, we've really kind of gone the gamut on this. Unless there's something else outside of what we've already said, I think we're good to go. I think we've gotten the message pretty clearly.
Could I just ask that somebody on the board explain exactly where we are in terms of the funding? Did we get the grant money and the timing and
So
all of
we,
that?
yeah, so we are right now getting the bids for what we've got relative to what the costs will be for the town. The grant money is there. We've got to figure out what we want to do with it. The time frame on that is June. We know that we have to make some decisions. We can't do that until we get the actual bid information of what the costs will be. That will be our meeting in May 20th. We'll have it on the agenda for that. We'll look at the total cost of everything. That's going to weigh in very strongly to the next step of where we go from there. So that's where we are right now.
Bids you're going to get on the latest plans. I mean, there's been 10 iterations since I've been involved in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
The latest plans, that's what you're getting a bid on.
Yeah.
Okay, and then will the bids also include the dressing up that we've talked about, or just concrete?
Greg said they were included, right? Are the bids including the dressing up, or is that separate? It's separate? Okay, so it's just on the plans.
Were we able to extend the deadline on the grant money?
I don't think we've asked for that yet. Yeah, we're waiting to see. We have to get the bids. That's sort of the gating factor at this point.
So we're right, okay, and today you're going to decide whether or not these plans we're going to.
No, we're not deciding any of that.
We don't have the bids. You are getting bids on these plans?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these plans that we're looking at now?
Yes.
What's the process for making those?
So the process, the question is, what's the process for making that decision? It's the same process that we've had all along, which is we're getting the community input, which we've had for 3 or 4 meetings now. We've gotten information relative to updating from our contractors and civil engineers. All of that information's coming forward. It will be mixed with the actual cost factors that are coming through. And based on those 3 things and everything that we've heard, we will make a decision and in consideration about that on the board. But based on the recommendations from our DPW and the professionals that we have working with us. So we will go through it. I want to make sure that everybody understands we have heard you. I see the petitions. I took a lot of notes. I've heard a lot of input, and I want to thank you for that. We will certainly take it into consideration as we go forward, but nothing will be decided until we actually see the bids that come in the beginning of May, and then our process will be to go through the bids, the input that we've gotten, the professional advice that we've gotten, and weigh that through, and we'll make a decision.
And the deadline, just so we better understand, because it's been very vague, and we've asked the same questions, the June deadline, what is that deadline? Do you have to be digging?
We haven't, okay, I agree. I don't think we've been too vague. We've been very clear. That's the time frame of when we have to make the decision on the grant, okay, whether we're going to go forward with it. And we're waiting to get that information before we go. We can file for an extension. We can decide that we don't want to do the grant money, that we're not going to use it. Those are all questions that we're going to answer when we have all of the information.
So it's not digging, it's just saying, calling the state, saying, we'll take the grant money. or
Whatever,
we won't.
yeah, we've got to make the decision based on the facts that we can get relative to the input and the money, the actual bid cost of what this job will be.
So, thank you.
Okay.
Greg, did we not hear from police on this? I thought
We did.
Chief
So
Conley did, yeah.
So the police were involved from the very beginning
Right.
with
That's
the
what I thought.
Complete Streets program. So Todd Fitzgerald was the lead on that. So he highlighted the beach in Union as his top concern for an intersection. We've had the 2 pedestrian car interactions there in the last 4 years. So that's the one intersection where we've had some pedestrian car conflict in terms of accidents.
Right.
So he puts that as number one concern.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think we're good. Anything else, please come forward after the meeting, whatever you want to do. Stay in touch with Greg. We're here. We've got all your information. Thank you, and thank you for your great way of asking these questions and participating. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We're going to be discussing the sidewalk.
On that, we weren't talking about that tonight, were we? Is that part
Right, so
of
we're
it?
still waiting for the final surveys and information. So again,
We can, one second. If people are going to stay, we had a question in the back around the Beach Street sidewalk. I'd like to cover that real quick. Yeah, we're just going to cover that real quick.
So the work on the sidewalk potential widening, we're waiting for the final survey work. Whatever is proposed will stay within the existing right-of-way. So once we have that fully surveyed, we will know what that is, and we'll certainly keep you posted as we get that information.
George Smith.
Yep. Right.
And the question I have is, and I think you've answered it, that you're going to be sticking to the idea that you're not going to be having a taking.
Correct. Correct. No intention of doing that.
That's good, because the plan that I gave you and gave Chuck.
Right.
That was, it showed 1 foot between the sidewalk and the property line. Now, that probably was not recorded. That was a topographic done by a surveyor. The date is all on there now. But I've since come up with 3 plans since then. Not going to the registry, but 2 of them have been recorded at the registry in Salem. And the third probably was. He's 1920, back in the days when the hotel was just burned down. 1943, just before my family bought the place. And the third was probably recorded in 1956, when one lot was divested to Bob Coyne, who's also very considerate about that sidewalk. He's on vacation, he just left this morning, he's not here. But between them, by the way, that hedge, I saw a plan last summer, or last fall, that showed the sidewalk extension of 10 feet going right over our hedge. Now that hedge has been there since 1943, it was an old hedge then, probably 100 years old. We've been maintaining that for 75 years, trimming it, maintaining it, keeping off sidewalk. And that hedge means a lot to us because that is our screen. There's a horrendous amount of traffic going by, and pedestrians from the train on the weekends is extraordinary. I prefer not to have a fence there because that walls people over. We're the only ones that don't have a fence, but I prefer a hedge to a fence so it doesn't wall the public off. They have a few abysses and see through the hedge somewhat, but we need that hedge very badly. These 3 plans that I have right here, if anybody wants to look at them, I can give you book and page numbers. Those, between them, completely define that property line with 3 old boundary markers that are still there, and part of the old hotel stone wall curved around the corner. One of the property lines that's shown in one of the plans is labeled iron in Carl Walk. It's actually encroached on the line. So I think you can save yourself some money if you want to go ahead and do a survey at great cost to the town. We pay for it, I think, not the grant. You probably give the surveyor the page numbers, and they probably avoid the plan.
Right, so I appreciate that information. We certainly gladly take a look at what you got.
Okay, thank you, George. All right, thank you very much, everybody. You can certainly stay. We've got more compelling things on the agenda, but I understand if you want to go. We're going to just pause for a second while people go. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm just going to grab a glass of water, a cup of water. Does anybody want one? I know, I want to move the,
Oh, this is for the town election officers? Well, we're gonna go back in as soon as people move out. I'll have to sign this or just me? All right, we're gonna keep moving on here. I'm just, yeah, we're gonna be done in a few minutes. Okay. We can't close the door. Sonia, can you just ask people to move on? Thanks. Yeah, just sign.
thank you. May 20th here, as long as my flight doesn't get delayed coming in. That's that Monday. I'm supposed to land at 3:30.
Okay, you'll make it. All right, Eli, you ready to go? Okay. Next on the agenda, everybody, is review of the budget process in the annual town meeting. Am I right on that? Is that the one we haven't covered yet? Okay. Greg, you want to give us
So, really just looking for any feedback people have in terms of how the whole budget process went and also how town meeting went. Obviously, it was a fairly quick.
It was a quick one. Record.
Wonderful. Yay. Nice.
Not a lot of questions. People seem comfortable with what they were approving. But it's always good to pause and take a look back over the last 6 months or so that had the process of pulling the budgets together and what, going forward, what potential changes you would like to see.
I have a couple thoughts. Anybody have any feedback?
Go for it.
So one of the things, particularly with the now implementation of the master plan, there'll be projects that are going to be coming up and need to be considered as part of what we're doing. And I think all of these issues that we've dealt with, whether it's Ocean Street, this...
Susan, I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time hearing. Can I, no.
Well, can you
No, we
close the door? Just- Thank you, Becky. That's okay. All right, so my point is looking, as part of the budget process, I'd like to get on the cycle of looking at what we're doing relative to grants and master plan ideas and how to get those thought of earlier on. So if we look at the cycle of after town meeting, there should be a look back of what we've done this year, a look forward of what we're planning, and the budget process informed by that strategic plan. And tying that to the grants and the kind of work that we want to do relative to that. So that was one piece.
Along those lines, what, we just have a policy change, right? Grants have to be brought up by Greg to the board so that we get some visibility to this. I feel like to trace the root of at least 3 major discomforts in this town, put it lightly, over the past 2 years have been rooted, I think, from good intention, but the evolution just hasn't gone well. And I don't think anybody intended that, but I think we just haven't, we're just not, we're not ahead of these things. So again, I'm not trying to stifle anybody's good thinking or intentions for the town, but we've just got to get more visibility into what this is leading to, because it's rolling along at its own pace, and then it ends up having implications for the town that a lot of people in town just don't want.
Right.
Can that be done in a way that, because I know a lot of times we have time constraints, so is that something, could we do that in a manner that we could, does it have to come to meeting if we're meeting every other week? I guess that's my question. If we have,
Well, most of the time, there's time to bring it before a meeting, which is good because it's a public meeting.
okay.
On a rare occasion, there may be something that we learn of sort of at the last minute that we think is in keeping with a goal or
Right.
a recommendation that's already been on the books that we might proceed, that we would give you a heads up on.
I think a lot of the grants have come before this meeting. I mean, the one that was the Complete Streets grant certainly came before this board multiple times. It was over an extended period of time. We had a lot of discussions about it. There's something else about the transparency and communications that's missing. I don't think it's necessarily the fact of whether or not the grants came before us. I think with the possible exception of one, they all did come before us.
Well, and I think
Then something's broken, because
It's getting people to come.
there seems to be a massive disconnect. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but there's a massive disconnect from where we're starting to where we're ending up.
Turn those off.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
Some of it is just getting people to come to meetings.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
It's still, is that better?
I think it's this one.
You should just don't put it in his voice. Okay, he just tried something too. Nope. I can't find that.
Anyway.
So I think this is the proverbial problem of trying, and again, the master plan point and the implementation of the master plan, which we've been starting to talk about in terms of what is the process. So the goal of the master plan was to give that framework so things are within context. Because what happens when you look at a Complete Streets or an Ocean Street, they sound like a great idea as an individual piece. But when you look at the context of what the community has said that they want, putting that into a prioritization, setting goals against it, and moving forward is one step of this new piece. So part of what we're writing right now, and hopefully we'll have to the board, is a straw man of how do we work as we implement the master plan against grants, against projects, all the things that tie into what we heard. So hopefully some of this will resound back to people because it's the stuff they gave us as important priorities. So that's step one. Step two, I think, is really looking at the how we work, which is both within the town departments but also the boards, of how we address these things, what's our process, what are the roles and responsibilities. You know, when you look forward to looking and solving these issues, you go back to, well, who's the point on that? Who's got the responsibility? What are the things that we need to do to make sure, and where's the accountability for that? So those pieces need to be tied in. This is sort of a precursor of some of the things that we have to think about going forward. So agreed that we've seen projects come before and we've dealt with them. Maybe not necessarily within the context of where we've dealt with them, but the standard process and sort of rigor that we need to do this with now really needs to be uplifted, because we do have multiple ways of communication. A lot of people are on Facebook and social media, including reading the Cricket and all these other things. So we have to make sure that our communication plans are tight, and that's part of what we're talking about with this additional help that we're looking for. But also setting forward a process that makes sense to deal with this stuff. So I think that that's, in terms of looking ahead for budget becomes a way to implement and execute the ideas, right? And we go forward with that. So it's sort of creating that piece up front of the context and the reasons why, and getting people involved early and often. You know, tonight was another example. You know, we've heard these things, but people need to be heard. They need to be acknowledged that what they're saying is coming forward, and as many times as we can, we need to listen to them. So, anyway, that's one part of the process. Anybody else have any other thoughts? Anyway, all right, Greg, was that enough?
Yeah, well,
Just
so
start-
again, well, part of looking at an annual calendar for
Yeah.
budget, so we will actually get underway in May.
Yes, yes.
For next year's budget process.
Absolutely,
So we'll want to
absolutely.
identify some high priorities, some
Yep.
goals,
Yep.
so that we can research those over the summer, so that we can tee them up and get ready for the budget cycle in the fall.
Absolutely.
I know that seems very early, but I think that's the best way to keep it going.
Well, and I think they should incrementally, you know, there's series of things that happen year to year.
Right.
So everything is a step moving in a direction to solve some of that, so, yeah. Okay, good. All right, town administrators report?
So first item is a request for a reserve fund transfer, and that is for supplementing the budget that was approved for a new patrol boat in the budget. We were hoping to get a slightly better deal, but we actually got a very good one nonetheless, to purchase a new to us patrol boat. This is a surplus vessel from the Coast Guard, and it's in very good condition. It's been on freshwater only. It's twin engines that have less than 2,000 hours apiece on them, so that's still a lot of good life. Both Brian Pike and Todd Fitzgerald have went to see the boat and feel very comfortable with it, and talked to the mechanic who maintained it, and they're excited to bring it up. They think it would be a good fit for us and allow a third presence out on the water in their own boat. So we had budgeted for additional hours for one of the police officers on busy weekends to be out on the water. This would allow that person to be out in their own boat and give us that much more versatility and flexibility out on the water. So the total cost, including, excuse me, including the need for some new electronics, it's a total of $45,000. We have $20,000 approved. I'm sorry, $25,000 approved in the budget. So the request is for an additional $20,000. At one point, we were debating whether to need the full 45, but we can use that 25 now rather than wait till July 1, since it was from the Waterway Fund. So the request is for approval of a reserve fund of 25,000. I'm sorry, 20,000 for a total of 45.
And the FinCom has approved this?
Yes, they have.
Okay. Questions?
What is the life of a typical engine? It says they have fewer than 2,000 hours on them. What do you expect? What does one expect to get out of those?
You know, if you get 6,000 hours, that's probably 4 or 5 years for us.
All right. Thank you.
So what's driving this need for additional resource?
So the biggest driver is just the volume of boater activity, certainly on weekends in particular.
But the number of moorings in town is fixed.
The number of moorings are fixed, but the number of transient boaters is what has increased tremendously.
So at what point do we stop increasing spending due to out-of-town traffic? Or do we spend until we control it, or do we somehow figure out a way to limit transient traffic? Because if unchecked, you just keep spending.
That's correct.
How do you limit
The challenge is just that.
boats coming through?
Why are there
visit?
transient boats?
I mean, how do you limit?
Well, you go to why they're transiting.
coming into town to.
They're not
take
coming into
advantage
town.
of All kinds of things.
Yeah. I don't think the
Are they
majority
shopping
of
in
transient
town,
traffic's
or
coming
are
into
they
town.
just anchoring?
There's a fixed number of
No, I'm
places
at-
for the
I'm-
boat to stop, so you can't have an increase in transient traffic into
Actually,
town.
we did actively take steps to increase the transient boating dockage.
Yeah, but how much did we increased it 100%, right? We basically doubled it. So we're still only dealing with, how many spots?
Well, I don't know that number offhand.
Max 8, 6?
Well, so we probably have 6 now, so you're doubling it to 12 or 14.
Right. I guess, I'm just trying to understand, I'm not aware of another part of the town budget where the capacity, in theory, has no limit, like we see with this.
Well, Singing Beach comes to mind in terms of we don't limit the number of people who go to the beach.
The number of trains coming in from the MBTA is fixed.
Right, but number of people who travel.
Spaces in town to park is fixed. So we're
I mean, I think-
within a margin. Yes, we could have influx. We could also have deflux when the beach washes away. But so there's some variability. But
I think you'll see it become limiting. People will start to seek elsewhere if it feels too crowded. I mean, the biggest generator of traffic is Sandala Cove. That's where we get the biggest demand.
Yeah.
On a sunny weekend day, you know. We're
So I guess the
seeing-
fundamental question on Sandella Cove, or anything that causes an increase in transient traffic to town, which is non-resident driven.
Right.
So there's 400 resident moorings in the town. 300 of them go to commercial or to any of the nonprofits. There's only 400. So from a taxpayer standpoint, it's fixed. My concern is, and I'm one of the people that spend my entire weekend on the water, so I'm guilty as charged in terms of being one of the people that's out there transiting. But even so, criticizing myself, why does this part of town benefit from an unchecked spend when no other part of town has a rate of increase in theory? Because if you measure this as a function of 400 mooring spots, this is a very large increase in proportional spend, even if the driving of the cost is actually transient. But when it comes back to taxpayers in the town, taxpayers are paying for what they are represented by.
But it's not paying, it's not just for it's not for moorings per se. It's more about, part of public safety from the
Yeah, no, I get
town
it.
point.
We have to-
I'm just saying, if you are equating it, from my perspective, you're equating it with the number of moorings.
Because
when
the
in-
number of moorings is a direct function of how much of the town actually enjoys the water. If you don't own a mooring,
But we
it's
still-
very hard to actually benefit from.
But by the same token, we have cars coming into town. We have to have public safety responsible for those.
There's nothing driving, there's no unchecked increase of cars coming into town. It's a fairly standard amount with some variability because of 4th of July or whatever. But on a normal day-to-day stability level, there isn't wild
But
fluctuation.
we don't know if this is not the new norm for Manchester. Perhaps it is, in which case,
I think it's definitely the new norm.
right.
But the question is, at what point does the new norm become unnormal? And are we accepting it as the new norm, I guess is the root of my question.
Well, is
Because
that
if we're going to
something
increase
that's-
spending, and trust me, I benefit from, on
Yeah.
a personal level, I benefit from all this spending. So it's not like I'm objecting to it because I feel like somebody else is getting, advantage in this town. I'm actually the person that gets the advantage. But there's an economic core question here that we need to prepare ourselves for. We're not going to solve it today, and we don't need to belabor this. But there is a core economic question that you could ask about the harbor. There's only a certain number of residents, as represented by the number of moorings in the harbor, that truly benefit from that part of the town. If you don't own a mooring, it's very hard to benefit from the spending in the town, in this area. So if it is driven by out-of-resident traffic, at what point do we just continue to spend to try to manage that? Or is spending the way into managing it is the question that we're not going to solve tonight, but at some point, we're going to have to address it.
Or do you collect daytime transient fees?
I don't know.
I
But
mean,
I mean,
that's
the fact that Bion told me, which I thought was a very powerful metaphor, was You know, the amount of traffic is, on certain weekends, is getting into the range between Kettle Cove and the harbor, is getting into the range of 500 to 600 boats combined, with an average of 3 to 4 people per boat. You know, so you're talking about, you know, nearly 2,000 people. If 2,000 people showed up to Tux Point, that would get a lot of attention. And if we were increasing the police budget to deal with 2,000 people at Tux Point, that would get a lot of attention. So, again, I think we should get the boat. I'm just saying, let's be conscious of the fact that we're dealing with something that actually we don't totally control yet.
Right, so you know, there are lots of people who don't agree with this, but I think we need to control and limit the number of transit anchor moorings that we allow. To have it be first come, first served and no limit, I think is a mistake long-term.
Unless the town wants to continue to spend, I mean, again, on a personal level, you know, I'm separating my interests of the town from my personal interests. On the personal interests, like, it's great. It's great that the town's spending this amount, but.
So this is coming from the waterway fund. This is not tax-based. So this is generated by the mooring fees primarily.
But at what rate does that eclipse? And when it begins to eclipse, then you're left with a question. Again, we don't have to deal with it now, but.
Well, I think this becomes one of those topics for, as we go planning into next year.
Correct.
For budget and summer looking at, let's dig into this a little bit and understand what we're solving for. That's my question. So if we understand this is an issue and there's a question about how far will this go, how do we solve for that? What's the recommendation in terms of what we look to do to deal with it?
Well, we do want to share, you know, this wonderful town at what cost, both financially and environmentally.
Yeah. So I think it's a good point, but I think to your point, it's a down the road piece, but it would be good to put this center on the summer research list for the budget.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so with that said, any other comments on the vote? So do we have a motion to,
So the 25,000 that was in the capital budget, this
this is an increase, yeah, so we're asking for 20,000 more.
that was specifically, it was for the replacement boat.
Right.
In the capital budget coming.
Right, I think it was just listed as equipment.
This is equipment, right?
Right.
So that'll burn the entire budget.
Right, but that was what he was targeting that 25 for.
Okay. So he was hoping to get a cheaper boat, but this one's better.
Right.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to fund or purchase the boat using $20,000 from the reserve fund as requested.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Any public comment about that issue?
Not typically, no, is there?
To approve a vote at 40 grand? It just seems really expensive.
Okay, well, we're in process, so, yeah. Okay, board voting, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Do noted. Okay. Go ahead, Greg, next.
Yeah, so other items, the shared services study is progressing. We will have a working session in the next few weeks. We'll get that scheduled to sit down with Essex and the consultants to do a deeper dive on their various areas that they've uncovered or recommend. We have that list of early action items most of those are moving forward. Most of them are fairly easy to move forward with, sort of sharing information and sharing contacts, resources, that sort of thing. So that's proceeding. Again, we're looking forward to a final report towards the end of June.
It'd be nice to have them come in and do that in a meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll look at sometime in May to try to set up that joint session. MSA is just sort of an FYI in terms of they're needing to be licensed as a camp. Construction update, people will see the detour and the construction out front here with Central Street and School, working on the valves. That'll be, and the bulk of the valve work for now, once that gets done the end of this week. They'll be working at Repark, speaking of that, later on this month. And also, we hope to get underway with the repairs to the Singing Beach revetment using FEMA money for the bulk of that.
Can I just ask that, I think we talked about it a while ago, that like on Thursday or Friday of each week, now that spring's here and these kinds of projects can get started, that we maybe just get a quick update
Yep.
from Chuck. It doesn't mean that it's then set in the proverbial stone.
Right, this is what's
But-
anticipated.
But, yeah, so that if we drive down a street and can't have to detour, we understand why, so that we can answer other people's questions. Just, once we start having a whole bunch of spring projects. And also to that end, I know there's a time frame to get crosswalks painted and all of that.
Right.
That needs to be front burner.
Is there a way to request, you mentioned MSA, is there a way to request the state to repaint the crosswalk at Old Corner Inn? The amount of kids that cross is disturbing. And the traffic that whips around that corner is really, really concerning. I've asked Chuck about what we can do.
Which
But
one?
The crosswalk at the Old Corner Inn, the kids take their bikes and they cross right there to go to MSA.
It's terrifying.
It's
It
terrifying.
is, and this has been a problem. I mean, when we lived on Tux Point, I remember, and people would fly around, and there's that flashing light, and there have been 2 deaths at the tree that's now gone by Old Corner. It's just people fly around, and
I mean, these are like, I think the youngest is like 7, you can start MSA, so these are young kids that aren't paying attention.
is
If
that
they
a
even walk
place?
their bike across the street.
No, is that a place to put a cone? I mean,
It's just, the issue from Chuck is it's the state controlled it, so
Right,
Yeah.
that's the problem. We can ask.
at least the thing should be repainted.
Yeah, 'cause
it's
that
really-
would be-
Pretty faded.
and maybe the MSA could even ask their parents who are driving to drive a little more slowly, because when I lived there, it was the parents of the MSA kids who were some of the worst offenders. Just saying.
All right.
Again, just sort of FYI, in terms of some human resource work, working with a consultant to get a new revised personnel handbook together. We'll hope to have that before you by early June for your final approval. And then from there, we'll be doing some additional training with staff on the personnel regs and various procedures related to that. We have a staff lunch scheduled for May 2nd at the church chapel. There'll be a focus on our health insurance plan and how to better utilize its various aspects. And then we'll also be doing some introduction of our HR work in the personnel handbook as well. So you're certainly welcome to join us for that. Just if you could let Sonia know, that would be great. And then lastly, I would be pleased to entertain a renewal of my contract, and would welcome sitting down with perhaps a couple of you to pull that together and present it.
Yeah, so I was going to suggest to the board, Arthur and I can sit down with Greg this Friday if you have time. Are you here Friday?
No.
Okay, well, we'll schedule a time. But what I thought we could do is have an initial conversation, and then in our next meeting, schedule a executive session so that we can talk as a board about the contract. So between now and May 6th, let's get a meeting together, and we'll do some preliminary work with Greg, and then we'll come back and do an executive session on May 6th to talk about that. That work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So before we go tonight, we should try to get a time to meet.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Anybody else have on their list?
I actually have one question. When the speed limits were reduced through town, who is that? Who initiated that?
So that was really through the Bike and Ped Committee. They requested the town meeting articles that the board advanced. So the town then adopted those 2 new local option laws to allow townwide at 25, and then the creation of safety zones at 20.
Okay, and who actually set where those speed limits, the specific streets?
So the bike and ped and principally bike and ped made recommendations that there be a 1 mile radius from the train station.
I've just had it, people asking me, and I just wanted to be able to give. Okay, thank you very much.
I think it's important to Greg's comment to note that it was town meeting.
I remembered it town meeting. Oh, I remember it very well.
It was town meeting
Yes.
approved.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah, you actually have to wait 3 years before you can revisit that, since it was a
Yeah.
town meeting approval. So,
Sure, it could come back up again. But anyway, okay. Last thing, Eli and I spoke earlier today, we're going to try to address the flag policy on May 6th. You're going to get us a
Yeah.
draft of what we want to do about the flags, because that is an important thing to close the loop on. The other thing, Greg, that I'd like to get on the checklist at some point, reading through the department head reports, particularly the one around fire, the whole issue of our hydrants and flow and all of that, I really would like to understand how we're going to address that.
yeah, so, and Al, as our interim fire chief, is aggressively doing that, but
Yeah.
I'm happy to have him come in.
Well, I think, again, this is one of those summer projects, right, where we dig deep and go on a deep dive on a couple topics. I would consider that one a priority.
Yes.
Particularly knowing that there's so many hydrants that can't support, we've got long driveways. I think it's something we need to solve for.
Yes.
So again, having that be a deep dive in the summer so that it's gated for something we need to deal with in the budget season. All right, anything else, anyone? No? All right, well, I guess I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.